wants to win money?
It's fine. So you could do a mitzvah.
What's the cause?
Yeshiva. High school programming events. You know,
Someone emailing me.
$1 to $360. It's one of those. I can remember Shari.
Is WhatsApp okay, or you prefer email?
Email.
Email, okay.
I have it. WhatsApp.
How much is the ticket?
1 to 360.
It's a gamble. You might get anywhere between.
But there's only 360. 360 tickets.
$1 each. So I'm going to raise 300.
No, the ticket. Each ticket costs $1 more.
You might get
so there's a $1 ticket, $2, all the way up to
or you might only
360.
be able to get one. You might get to get one up to 360.
But you pick how much you're doing, or it's random? How much?
Just
Just
forward
forward
an
an
email
email from you back to you.
Go around like a slot machine, and you jump up and down. And
You're gambling.
and you get like 10.
And you're basically gambling for the raffle ticket.
Oh, you're gambling for the opportunity to do a mitzvah. You're hoping to get a higher number. So you get to donate more.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you can donate more
This
without
week,
that.
this week they'll lose
You
twice.
really hope to get a higher number? Really? Honest truth. Did you really?
No.
A higher number. Did you say because you got a higher number? You know what? There's so much later I'm going to do another one.
Actually, you did.
I had a high enough draft number that I had.
What was your number?
Like 306 or something like that.
I was 197.
Mine, I was 3.
The year they were going from 190 to 2000. I was 184.
In Dallas, when they do the same thing, Rabbi Ringelheim bullies all the alumni. No, your number was too low. You have to do it again.
Yeah, what year were you?
Came out every single one does.
Hi.
You should buy a raffle ticket.
That's one of the stupidest mistakes I've made.
What was that?
Huh?
What was the most stupidest mistake?
One of them. Second
Besides getting married.
No, that was the second one. That was a mistake. That was a good move.
You have to buy the
For me,
book.
that was a good move.
You have to buy the book.
I left in Yeshiva. Go to college. I lost my phone.
What's that, divinity?
Oh, good morning.
There were people
Published?
that went to the divinity school.
I'm saying, why can't you just make the UI so you always see all of these?
Yale Divinity School.
As soon as you take away, it goes away.
I thought you were talking about piece of
As
change.
soon as you turn them on, it's all
They say in the hub tomorrow.
Well, that's annoying.
Yeah, but you know.
bad UI.
This is cream filling.
Rabbi Burger, you should buy a ticket.
Where's the cream filling?
Rabbi Burger, do you want to buy a raffle ticket?
No, this year's.
You should buy a raffle ticket. I have
So when
one.
Pesach Sheni falls on the
Rabbi
hub,
Kier, you
skip
could buy a
that.
raffle ticket too. It might even go to your salary.
I feel like we just had this a couple of years ago, though.
Still trying to find out why the code says Alfuni.
Oh, good morning, good morning.
What do you say, Rabbi? Buy a ticket. You can even put out
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Harvey.
after the shoot. Buy a ticket.
Okay. This will be ready for action?
You have to open the browser.
Yeah.
Okay.
Published.
Ready?
Yeah, more or less.
I mean, you want me to check it again.
It's not. Go to the website.
Okay, good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. This week's share, I think, has a lot of relevance in general in our Jewish world, in particular for this coming week, and hopefully many, many weeks to come. What we titled today's share is Visiting Kivrei Tzadikim. Now, this week in particular is probably the biggest event on the Jewish calendar where people visit Kivrei Tzadikim. Today, this week, come Erev Shabbos, is Lag BaOmer, and for years and years, older minhag to visit the kever of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai in Meron, which we know they get thousands upon thousands of people visit. This year being Friday, many people encourage people not dafka to go on Erev Shabbos. Dangerous, especially there could be Chol Shabbos involved. People, and they're asking people to go days before, after, and in general, you know, Shimon Bar Yochai Meron is a big, big day on the Jewish calendar, and many people visit Kivrei Tzadikim there. But really, especially in today's world, the idea of visiting Kivrei Tzadikim has become, I might even use the word, almost become like a sport. Lahavdil, people could travel the country to visit, to follow their team, on a road trip. Well, in the Jewish world today, the frum world, it's become a very in to visit Kivrei Tzadikim. And in some ways, the more obscure the spot they're located, go for it. So someone who's the basic Kvarim here in America don't have the same pizzazz as going to Europe, going all around the world, literally. I actually once saw a little video of somebody, like, to reach some kever in the middle of, who knows, somewhere in the Middle East. They had to take trains, planes, and automobiles, and beyond automobiles, even ATVs, to go up, mountainous paths to reach a kever where no one's gone before. And it's now really, of course, the concept of visiting a kever of a tzaddik, we'll see soon, is a long history in Klal Yisrael. Of course, we daven by Kivrei Tzadikim, but how it's become in vogue is definitely something that's, sometimes it follows trends, and people just follow what everyone else is doing. So I'm going to talk today about it, exactly how to do it, the milas in doing it, and perhaps reasons not to in certain circumstances. But it's definitely become very, very big. I'm wondering, as I talk my proclamations of what's the most popular kever site, right, when I gave credit to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, there are some people that might say there's some place in Ukraine that, I don't know the numbers. Do they get more in Ukraine than we get in Meron? I doubt it, because Ukraine is just really, for the most part, to go to Uman is a Rosh Hashanah thing.
Springfield Gardens.
But Meron,
Probably
people
more
go
short.
all year round. Lag BaOmer is the epitome. But yes,
I saw an ad in
Chevron,
Yacht.
right? How could we not, now Chevron we'll talk about, it might be not so easy to get to, but Chevron's a place which obviously the Avos are buried there, Maris HaMachpelah. I don't mean to, that itself is somewhat of a funny thing that we can have. That we can have, the rankings of popularity do not necessarily reflect the great nature of each of the Kvarim. If the Avos are not ranked number one, obviously they should and could be. But, there are challenges involved.
There's more space there than at the other ones.
So I saw
Yes.
an ad for buses from Borough Park and Flatbush to Deans, New Jersey, to the
Lag BaOmer.
they have an old hell and everything there. More than one Bobo over
Yes, the Baba Rebbe. It seems there's a minhag. I don't think it's is this your site then? Lag BaOmer? Careful what I say. I don't remember. Maybe it is on Lag BaOmer?
Yeah. So I guess they run from very early in the morning.
Yeah.
They get back home in time for
The
shopping.
Ribnitzer, who famously stepped foot here in Florida, I believe. So films,
They
right?
also had separate buses for women.
Did the Ribnitzer come to Florida or just named the mikveh after him?
No. No, they don't stop them.
Careful what I say, I don't know.
No.
But the Ribnitzer has a kever right there in Muncie people go to. There are lots of kvarma we'll talk about. Now, firstly, I'm going to focus on, I hope to focus on a lot of issues involving davening by Kivrei Tzadikim. And hopefully with that, we'll we'll get a broad perspective of the concept. Now, first and foremost, let's understand something pretty basic. What is the reason to daven by a kever of a tzaddik? What's the point? Especially, we're building up how people could invest such efforts, money, and time, and literally, risking their lives. So what's the point? What's the gain of going to daven by a kever? So the Mishnah Berurah brings down, I'll show soon what the context of the Mishnah Berurah is, but he writes, this is in Tav Kuf Pei Aleph, in the top of one sheets. He says, Beis HaKvaros u'makom menuchas hatzadikim. A cemetery is a place of rest for the tzadikim. V'hatfila mekuberes sham biyoser. And tefillah is more accepted over there. So in a certain sense, the reason to go daven by a cemetery is a cemetery has a special schos. There's a special schos to daven by a cemetery, and therefore, the reason to go to the cemetery is you want an extra schos for one's tefillos to be accepted. That's the place to go. Does that mean, I'm only going to daven, by Meron every day. I'm not going to daven in this shul.
Or the Kota.
We're not, right? The kosel or this. We're not saying that. Right, that's a very interesting shayla. Let's say a person has limited time. He's on a trip to Eretz Yisrael. Should he, spend it more davening? It's a very interesting shayla. Right? Now, I assume everyone gets, okay, there's one spot you have to daven in Eretz Yisrael. I assume people would understand that seemingly the Kos Amaravi is the best place to go. Because that's the place where Chazal say that the Shekhinah never left, and that's Psach Shari Shamayim L'Tfiloseinu. Right there is the best place on earth. Okay, I daven by the Kosel. Now where should I daven? I could daven in the Mir, or I could daven in Meron. Now, really, I'm bringing up this question now. That wasn't really the point of today's share for the moment. I'll reflect back at that later. But, these things, there's a lot of, how big, how special is the inyan of davening by a kever? So the Chavetz Chaim does say it's definitely a special schos to daven by a kever. And we'll see in a moment, maybe a further elaboration why that's true. Now, also to think of ourselves, I feel very lucky. One of my Rebbeim, actually I should give credit to a couple of my Rebbeim, I was zocheh to learn in Eretz Yisrael, and I definitely saw from my Rebbeim that we wouldn't do this as, on a daily basis, and it wouldn't take away from learning. But, as an aside, once in a while, literally we go kvarim hopping. We would visit different kvarim. And I saw my Rebbeim, it was something that definitely was part of their lives. And so in life, and mindset, you can't be in Eretz Yisrael all the time if you're living in America. But keep your eyes open. There are opportunities, there are places to go and daven. And kvarim exist here in America. And it's a big inyan to daven there. I would add one point which we made last week, which is part of the trigger for today's share. Rav Gamaliel Rabinovitz recently made a point that if anything, there's more of an inyan to daven by one's forefathers than to daven at Kivrei Tzadikim. Because one's forefathers, parents, grandparents, through the ages, they're invested in you. You're part of them. And they're up there in Shemayim, and we'll talk in a moment exactly how to focus the daven. But they perhaps could do more for one than tzaddik. Obviously, not downplaying what a kivrei tzadikim is, but a person should all the more so appreciate what it means to go to the Beis HaKvaros. Of course, there are minhagim, people to go on the yurt site. It's a year, at least. But there's definitely something to it, and people are able to arrange that, to do that different times of the year, different life circumstances, things go on in a person's life, to realize one of the ways for a person to, to gain schusim, davening in the basic kvaros, should be something that's on the radar. Yes.
Are we going to discuss what philos to say?
Yes. Perhaps how to daven them also. So let me do the first point I want to focus on, which is what is the focus that one should have when they're davening in a basic kvaros. Now this could get tricky, so do not stop listening to the share right here. There's going to be a major machlokas, and this major machlokas, sometimes the machlokas, okay, the Chavetz Chaim brings down 2 shitas in the Mishnah Berurah, and you do this way, you do that way, even if halacha is like one, but the other ones, here, this is a pretty heated machlokas, and we'll see in a moment, one side might hold the other side that's kfira. So one has to be careful. There are 2 opinions how one goes about davening by a basic kvaros. First opinion is the opinion of the Shla, amongst others, that when you go to basic kvaros, what you're really doing, I would say similar to a tefillah that one says in Slichos called Machnise Rachamim, is one is davening, utilizing, or I would even use the words to, the tzaddik, that the tzaddik should help you out, utilize his chusim up there to help you out. So when you go to the basic kvaros, when we go to Shimon Bar Yochai's kever, they're davening for Shimon Bar Yochai to intercede on his behalf. Hope I said that over well. Believe that's the Shla's opinion. The alternative opinion, brought by the Shach and the Bach, amongst others, is that Chas v'Shalom, one can't do that. One cannot daven to an intermediary. Davening to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, we only daven to Hashem. Hashem is everywhere. We daven to Hashem. So what's the point of davening by a basic kvaros, by a cemetery, is being the fact that that's the place where the tzaddik is buried. So that's a place where he connects and has zechusim over there. So what you're really doing is asking the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, please give me Yeshuas, please help me out with the zchus of this tzaddik. But the focus, of course, is davening to Hashem. I believe those are 2 different ways to approach it. There are those that take the first opinion. But if you look in the Mishnah Berurah, the Mishnah Berurah writes very strongly, very clearly, in the second line there, Achol Yosim Magmaso Neged HaMesim. You're not putting your tefillah to the mesim there. Ach yivakesh me Hashem yisparach. You should daven to Hashem. Sheyitin alav rachamim b'schus hatzadikim shochnei afar. You're asking Hashem, please help me out. The schus of these tzadikim buried there. So you're davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but I'm davening with these people's schusim. Now, again, I could daven. This is the best place to channel and get those schusim, because that's where they're makom menucha. That's where they're resting. But you're davening to Hashem. Yes.
But they're both in Yonim that I can't daven to this tzaddik. I can't daven to that person, but I can speak to that person in a regular, as if I'm just, almost on a phone call that I know that I'm not getting any answer from that person.
Yes.
Whereas the actual davening,
yes,
an actual tefillah has to be the second tzaddik.
Yes, I would make sure that's on the tape, so I'll say it over. What Josh added is what I'm talking about right now is specifically the davening. Who you asking, who you asking, end of the day, who's going to do it? The answer is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't mean a person comes to Kivrei Avos, a person comes to Kivrei Tzadik, doesn't mean, you can't, quote unquote, talk to a tzaddik, talk to one's relatives over there. Sure. And, one of my rebbeim, I'll talk about this in a moment, in a broader sense, but would say, the more you connected with a tzaddik, you want to swear him. Right? So whatever connection you have to that tzaddik, like, okay, I feel comfortable over here. The famous language of Chaim Shmulevitz, or Shiva the Mir, right? Mama Rachel Bei Nachamol. When he was by Kever Rachel, Chaim Shmulevitz gave a famous speech, which he turned into song, where he says, Mama Rachel, cry for us again. The Medrash, he depicted the Medrash, Bnei Yisrael in Galos. They come back to Kever Rachel, and there's Mispal over there. That's why she was buried on the road. And all the different Shemayim, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were pleading with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe, Aaron, and none of them were successful in Bez Hashem bringing the Geula. But the Medrash says that Rachel cried out, and Hashem said, hold on, I hear you. And so Chaim Shmulevitz famously said, as in addition to that Medrash, Mama Rachel, it's your son Chaimol. I know the Medrash, but I say Bei Nachamol. Should cry more. Keep on crying. We need to get out of the gullus. So of course, one could connect. Talking is a way people connect with the Makom Menucha that you have in a Beis HaKvaros. But the tefillah itself, according to the Mishnah Berurah, that tefillah is specifically from Hashem and the schus of those who are here. Yes?
We're discussing schusim, and we know in this world we're supposed to try to get as many schusim as we can. Is there a question of a limit? I mean, how much, or is it once they pass, then it becomes unlimited? Yeah,
no, well, that's a very, that segues quite well into what I'm about to do next. So we'll see that. Hold on. But the basic first area is just to have clear the focus. When one goes to a kever, yes, they could connect to the person buried there in whatever way they can, right? People will touch the stone of the kever. People will, right? We'll see other things perhaps to do, right? Make a marker that they were there. But in terms of the actual tefillah, the tefillah to Hashem, according to the Mishnah Berurah, tefillah should be specific to Hashem in the schus of this person. And the fact that you were there, you're coming to that kever, that gives you that schus. People feel, you go to that kever on the yard site, it's even the bigger schus. So that's one aspect, focus. Now there's another thing potentially to do by a kever, and I believe this one, till now we're talking about, I'm doing something which I need for myself. I need Yeshua's, so I'm going to a kever. Now, of course, one should realize, especially when it comes to one's parents, it's a two-way street. It's not just you're going to a kever and you're gaining from it that I need help. So here's the best channel, the best place to get that help. Anytime a person visits a kever, you're showing kavod l'meis. So when visits family, that's a big deal. Anytime you go to a kever, that's covered for the mace. And you go to Tzaddik's kever, that's covered for them. And you're performing something for them. It's a schus that, Megalgan schus, like Zakai, that you're reaching out to utilize their schusim. So that's a big deal. The Gemara in Baba Kama adds another aspect. The Gemara talks about, I believe it was by, the Gemara, we always have everything here except for a chance. But I believe it was it by Chizkiyahu or by Yoshaphat? by Chizkiyahu. When he passed, the Gemara's lashon is Hoshev Yeshiva al Kivro. They literally put a yeshiva on his kever. And what that means is they learned his Torah by his kever. And the Gemara says about that, a very interesting, spooky language, Sov Sov Dov Kos Bakever. Literally, his lips move in the grave. Now, what does that mean? When you learn the Torah of someone who passed on, you're generating a schus for them. Every time you quote them, that's a schus for them. Now, really, that works anywhere and everywhere. If you say over, this is the Rabbi David Sharfman Shir, right? So when you say over a vart, a halacha from a person who passed on, it's a big schus for the person. So Dov goes bakever. Remember, a driving force Rabbi Sharfman had after her husband was nifter was the idea of the Torah going on, because that's a schus. The more one quotes a person's Torah, that's a tremendous schus. Literally, it's as if they're alive. Their lips are alive. So that means when you go to an Adam Gadol's kever, if you say over Torah of theirs, that's another madrega. You're generating a big schus for them. So therefore, some have the minhag that they were learned by the kever of a tzaddik. Now you think about it, a lot of times now, what they have are these kavarim tours, right? Rabbi Pesach Krohn, continue to have her foolish lema, is famous for leading these types of tours. And I remember, I think one of the first times he was going to visit the kever of Naftali Trupp, the Rosh Yeshiva in Radin. He was Bal Yeshiva doing a bris, and he made sure to ask the Rosh Yeshiva for stories. Yeshiva hails from Radin, Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim. So he was asking us for stories about Rav Naftali Trupp. He's going to his kever, wants things to say over. When you talk about a tzaddik, especially if you say over part of his Torah by one's kever, that's a big schus for them. Sov sos dov kos bakever. I'll tell you a quick aside, I can't hold back. I remember when my Rebbe, Reb Henoch Leibowitz, was getting older, so slowly, very smart, he appointed his successors in his lifetime, and he started giving over different aspects of the full Rosh Yeshiva job to them. And one of the things he gave over was his Pilpul Shiurim, his Shiurim he said to the whole yeshiva, he gave over for his Talmidim to do. It's getting harder for him to do it. His Talmidim were doing it. So, on the one hand, it's bittersweet. The here used to get up there in front of the whole yeshiva and give this hour-long presentation of deep chidushim, and now you're not up to it, but you're having your students do it, and they're saying over your Torah. So I heard it from him multiple times. He said, this Gemara, which we just quoted, Sov sos dov kos bakever. If your lips move when someone passes away, if someone else is saying over their Torah, the Henoch said, Kal v'chomer b'chayav. If in my lifetime they're saying over my Torah, my lips are moving. That's how he dealt with it. Amazing. But it's interesting. This issue of learning Torah in the Beis HaKvaris is not so simple. And let me give introduction to this. Part one of this, I think most of us are very connected with, but we don't necessarily connect the dots to these other aspects too. If you look at Hilchot Tzitzis, Siman Chav Gimel, so the Mechaber writes, Mutar l'kanes b'Beis HaKvaros v'lovish tzitzis. You don't have to take over your tzitzis when you're going into a cemetery. However, you can't have your tzitzis out that they're, flapping away while you're in the cemetery. And if al nigrar kvaros also mishum loig l'rosh. What's this? What's loig l'rosh? Shenira k'mecharef. Mishabura says it's like blasphemy. She'enim yachol lekaimes mitzvos. When you're standing in a cemetery, you have to realize, like we said, that's the place in this world where the nifter is most connected to. Now, they're there. You're coming by with your tzitzis, of all mitzvahs in particular. Tzitzis remind us of all the mitzvahs. And you're sort of, spiking the football in their face. You're rubbing it in. Look, I have mitzvahs, and you don't. What's the famous story of the Gra? The Gra on his deathbed was crying. I was wondering, the Gra, he knows where he's going, It's a one-way, no question about it. It's a one-way ticket. Why was the Gra crying? And he's told his Talmidim, he says, in this world, it's so easy to do mitzvahs. For a few dollars, you buy a pair of tzitzis. He says, but in the world to come, for the most part, you're stagnant. You can't do mitzvahs. So the concept of doing a mitzvah, wearing tzitzis is a mitzvah. So if one is in a base of kvaros and those tzitzis are visible for others, that itself is sort of, you're dancing on their graves. It's not nice. And one should avoid that.
But if you're reciting Tehillim or something, they can't do that either.
Very good point. Hold on.
And what about the flip side view of that even? So it's good to see that people are coming to the Kfaros and doing mitzvahs.
Okay, good. So let's see. So first and foremost, the Machaber Shulchan Aruch says one can't do that. And that's really where most people are aware of the idea that if one has tzitzis out in any way, they should make sure to tuck in by a cemetery. Now, I want to show you a halacha which is less well known, and this is exactly what you're bringing up. In Hilchos Kriyas Shema, look what it says. Also, likros Kriyas Shema toch arba amos shel meis. It's forbidden for one to recite Kriyas Shema within 4 amos of a person who passed away, obi beis hakvaros, or in a cemetery. Then kara lo yatsa. And if you recited Kriyas Shema near a mace, near a beis hakvaros, you're not yotze. You got to do it again. Now the Chavetz Chaim explains why you have to do it again. It's a kanas. Maker did, of course, one's yotze as long as it's the right time. There's no things ma'akev, but there's a kanas. We don't want people doing that. However, look in the first Mishabura, Tezvav, Kriyas Shema, v'hu adin lomer kaddish v'shar divrei kedusha. This is not just in terms of Kriyas Shema. This also applies to reciting kaddish, which is something which many times is done near a cemetery. V'shar dvarim kedusha, and so to other things. V'atami shumya lo gerosh. What's the reason not to do it? The same we saw before by tzitzis. Lo gerosh. Okay. Now, this is tricky.
To satisfy your requirement.
Now,
your side.
I'll show you. Look in the bottom by the. I brought it from Dirshu. Right? When you saying Kaddish, you're saying Kaddish because it's the yurt site, and that's why you're saying Kaddish. Or L'chvodo, sure the exact case of that. Kalser, the Gesher HaChaim, famous sefer on these things. Shamilgo Omro, the minhag is to say it, Afil B'toch Arba Amos Shomeis. One does recite Kaddish in a cemetery, even up to 4 amos by the mace. Shekivan Shezer L'tzorcho, or L'chvodo, Ein Bezeh Mishum Yalgal Rosh. The Gesher HaChaim explains what many of us have seen, that one does recite Kaddish sometimes by a kever. And he says, since you're doing it for the honor of the person there, therefore, halacha l'maisa, it's okay. That's what the Gesher HaChaim is bringing down. But it's definitely a tricky balance. Here he's allowing to recite, within Daled Amos. So the element of Limud Torah by a kever is also a tricky thing. I've seen, in the modern day poskim, both sides. Some say it's okay, but some, think about it. You're generating a schus for the nifter, right? Kaddish is generating a schus, and Limud Torah is generating a schus. But at the same time, there's an element that you're rubbing it in a little bit. They can't do it. So it's a tricky balance. Some say the right thing to do is move away 4 amos from the kever. Don't do it right there. So, it's not such a simple thing. You go to a kever, and now, if there's room, kol kavod, right? You could stand 4 amos away from the kever. You could say over their Torah, speak about it.
You rarely have 4 amos.
Yeah, if it's a packed cemetery, you may not have that ability.
Have you ever seen that at a funeral? Could they move over to say patch?
Well, he's saying also because in the average funeral you're in a cemetery, so there's multiple kfarim there always. But there are different circumstances.
To show where they're all packed.
Well, the bigger problem is you're not doing it for the other people.
Right. Very good point. Weiss brings up that Lamaisa, it's one thing, it's probably better to say it in front of the kever who you are, because at least you're doing it for his cover. The person next to him, you're not doing it for his cover. In a certain sense also, I get that feeling sometimes, like when you visit a kever, sometimes this kever is like the most visited kever in the cemetery. Well, next to it, like nobody goes to. So, yeah, it's good to have the neighbors in mind too.
2 things. Someone mentioned earlier the kosel, so none of this would apply to going to the kosel. But by Maros Machpila in particular, I know that there are regular minyanim.
Yes.
Also, it
It's
sounds
also not in
like
Daled
it would have to be shachar and minimum of if it's even okay.
Yeah. Now, Lamaisa, we do find that minyanim do take place by kfarim. It's interesting. We'll start first. Maros Machpela, the big hall to daven is actually not by the individual kfarim. They have a big hall in the middle with the kfarim on the sides. But one could daven there, as one knows. The kfarim are way down, so you could definitely daven within those little things. I saw interesting shilos. I think a couple times a year, right in the Chol Moed, they open up Kever Yitzchak. Is one allowed to daven in Kever Yitzchak? This is a whole different discussion, which I'll get to under my miscellaneous halachas, because unfortunately during the rest of the year it's used as a mosque.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I believe, 100%, it said, the one could daven by Kever Rachel, by Kever Yitzchak, to shout Shuvas Yabia Omer, Moshe Sternbach.
If the question is based on it being a mosque during the year, then it's not a shot.
Lamaisa, it said the stipler was makbid of these things. The stipler didn't go into Maros Machpela because of this. But, the common
you didn't go in
practice.
the whole thing because of that?
Correct. But, again,
even though only part of it is used that way.
Yeah. It's all connected. It's all one building.
All right, but again, if he's holding that, then he's consistent, closing the whole thing. I'm not going there at all.
It's a pretty diversified.
But again, let me just finish up this point before I go to multiple miscellaneous halachas. The clock is ticking. But people don't realize, when they go to a kever, it's not necessarily just one dimensional. Just you davening there and see. It's not just withdrawals. You could also do deposits. Anytime you visit a kever, that's a deposit. That's a kavod and a schus for the nifter. But it's also, you could generate schusim if you say over some of their Torah. Now it's debatable, should one do that within 4 amos or not? Should one distance themselves? Okay. Where possible, definitely best to do it beyond that. But Hoshev Yeshiva al Kivrei, there's an inyan, In Tveria, the same spot, you basically have Rabbi Akiva and the Ramachal. And I think people donated. I think over there, you could find Svarim with the Ramachal over there. I know in Amuka, I've seen Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, Svarim over there. And there's something to it. Shem Bar Yochai, people like learning Zohar, there's an Indian there. That to learn the Torah, there's some Mamarim. Mordechai maybe will start collecting Mamarim and Shas from Shem Bar Yochai. So, one could learn that by one's kever, and it's an Indian. Hashav Yeshiva al Kivra. Now, I want to just touch on a few miscellaneous halachas. In general, after a person goes to a Beis HaKvaros, there's an Indian to wash one's hands before they go into another building. And in general, that's a thing. I found quoted from modern day poskim that by Maris Lamach Pela and Kavar Rachel, those are already considered like Makomos Tefillah, and I assume probably also has to do with the kever, but they say you don't have to wash by those places. Interestingly, Kavar Rachel seemingly it's closer, but
Rachel seems a little more standard.
Right. Set up at Kivrei Rachel.
Right.
Why wouldn't you wash it?
I'm not sure. It could be because you're not really, bimatame. You're not getting so close to the mace. I'm not sure. Another aspect. 111. Yeah, 1-2 times. But and then flip the cup upside down. There's some Indian in that. Now, there's an Indian to go to Kvarim on specific days. Obviously, a yurt site, first and foremost, is the best time to go to the kever. Now, some big tzadikim, as we mentioned before, Meron and other spots, it's try to go to the Orach Chaim's kever and Har Zeisim on his yurt site. It's dangerous. We'll get to that too. But yeah, so
That happened in Morocco.
yeah, unfortunately,
Unfortunately.
yeah. And so Lamaisa, there's an indigo on the yurt site, but you can't make it on the yurt site days before or days after. One could definitely go. And in general, it's brought down the halacha. These first halachas that I quoted here from the Mishnah Berurah are in the Hilchos Erev Rosh Hashanah. It's brought down in the Erev Rosh Hashanah. There's an Inyan before the Yom Adin to go to Beis HaKvaros. Also, it's brought down Mechaber and Shulchan Aruch on Tisha B'Av. There's an Inyan to go to the Beis HaKvaros. There too, obviously, a person's able to it. Now, there's a lot of miscellaneous halachas. I first want to quote what the Mishnah Berurah brings down. The Mishnah Berurah could have brought down many different things. You see in the Svarim, they have all different ideas. He only brings down 3 things. Look what he writes. I'm reading the end of the Mishnah Berurah on top. The Yaakov HaKvaris. First and foremost, be careful. Do not walk on the kever. Try to go around the kever. Not to walk on top of it. That's probably the reason why some kfarim, they actually put the monument over the kever. This way no one's going to walk on it.
That's Israeli style.
Correct. Secondly, v'yitin tzedakah kodem she'omer tchinos.
What are you doing? You
So you have to be careful. Try it. Huh?
can't help it.
At the best of your ability, try to, there's a tiny path, but you're right.
Like there's very little space
Yeah.
between-
Try your best.
It's also why it ends up that people spread out a lot.
you know,
But
rock on top.
the second point is one should give tzedakah before they daven. There's an Indian for that,
It's usual.
Right.
It's the other way around.
right? Here it's saying before you daven, one should give tzedakah. By many kvarim, there'll be people waiting to take your pledges.
Not budget.
Yes, right. Your credit card, straight up.
Right, when I went to Farhad State,
Right.
the Arabs there, they're there holding.
Right.
Kids are there getting money. They want money.
And third, an interesting halacha, which is probably based on Kabbalah, vein leilach al kever echad shtei bam b'yom echad. You shouldn't go to the same kever twice in one day. That means to daven, if you forgot your glasses over there, you could go back and get it. That's okay. But one shouldn't visit the same kever normally twice in one day. A couple other miscellaneous halachas.
What about the stone?
Yeah, that's an Inyan.
What is it?
That you were there. It's marking and shows kavod. that you visited there. I do feel the stones. You know, you sometimes find is some kfarim they have as a as a beautification of the kever site. On top of the dirt, they'll have stones. So you sometimes find, ooh, that person's stones are saying by the kfarim, by all his neighbors. You shouldn't take stones from someone else's kever. But there,
People will take stones from somebody else's monument,
right?
put on their own mother or father's.
Yes.
That's us, sir.
Correct.
Yeah.
Be careful. You know, if you don't find the stone, it's okay. And to take some big brick and put it on top.
When I was in Israel,
You know.
I was in Meir Shirim, and I said, "Are we throwing stones today?" They
Yeah.
said, "No, we're not doing that today."
Oh gosh.
The grass over the shoulder, is that just the input?
No, there's like something to that.
Rabbi said you have to designate the stones ahead of time.
I'll tell two other stories,
It's like throwing rice by
a
way.
couple other halachas.
Apparently he doesn't.
But talking about the danger sometimes going to a kever. You get, unfortunately, you know, too many people going to the same kever. But there's other aspects too, and it should definitely be spoken out. One shouldn't go to a kever where it actually is dangerous to get to that kever. Unfortunately, in Eretz Yisrael today, there are multiple kvarim that are probably dangerous to go to, and one shouldn't have his religious fervor override v'shmartem nafsho seichem. It's personal safety. So you have to ask questions.
It's scary to go hard, I'd say so, because you have to go through East Jerusalem to get
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, if one goes with, you know, a proper vehicle and armed,
boxers.
yeah, okay.
That's why by the
You know,
Orachayim's yard site.
all these types of things, people should be careful to, you know, do their research ahead of time. You know, unfortunately nowadays you have to worry about rockets too. You know, but you know, I just asked a shayla the other day if one could go up north to Miron, Sfas, Tveria, and I was told yes. You know, despite, you know, occasional rocket warnings, but you know, kvarim for kohanim. What do kohanim do at kvarim? You know, unfortunately, a lot of times, you know, they feel left out. So first and foremost, important halacha: as long as the kever is visible, even if they're not there, they're on the outside, but the kever is visible, they are allowed to daven, and that counts as if they were by the kever. There are some cemeteries which the way they set it up are sort of with paths that a Kohen could go there.
There has to be like no trees.
Right, there has to be no trees, this. I think, I was told, I have to examine the area better, but Vaji Yosef is buried right in the beginning of the Beis HaKvaros in Sanhedria. And over there, you know, mamash, you walk in right to the right. And I've told the people, say it's
They
good
did a
enough.
bunch of construction there with the walls and changed everything.
Oh, they did? Oh, wow. Okay. See.
Working on it for a while. No one knows that.
I found, interestingly, Kohanim, look, Ma'aseh Machpelah, Kavarachal, the basic verse in Tzfas, it means including the mikvah, Kohanim cannot go to. But I did find, they bring down that the base of Medrash, above the kever of Shem Bar Yochai, a Kohen could go to. Because it's in the cave underneath, the way it was built, is a Kohen could go, they bring to the base of Medrash on top of it, and that'll be okay.
I don't know how they know it's been closed for 100 and 100 years.
Now,
They'll use AI.
I got to tell a quick story. I'll end with this. But, you know, it is a big schos to daven at the kever of a tzaddik. And I just heard the story on Shabbos and it blew my mind. And there's one person in the room that might know what I'm talking about. But I'll tell the story, part of the story. A friend of mine used to tell me a whole long Maisa, basically without specifics. He's a Hatzalah guy, American Hatzalah guy, and he happened to be in Eretz Yisrael. And he ended up, the day he was leaving, he went to the airport. He thought he had a 6 p.m. flight. He gets to the airport, the guy jokes with him, "You're here early." He says, "Your flight's 6 a.m. He jumps on the light rail, goes right back, takes out his kids to dinner.
There's time to go back to you.
He has, lots of hours left. So, he's looking to do things. Called a friend of his, another American. He's like, why don't we go out to dinner? I just went out to dinner. Whatever. Does it again. And he goes out to dinner. He's not eating. He's just sitting with his friend. Okay. They finished the meal, looks at the clock. He still has quite a few hours. Let's go to the airport. He says, you know what? Let's get together with a third friend of ours, an Israeli. Chashav Arav. Let's visit some Adam Chashav. Fine. They do that. Usually they spend time with that Adam Chashav for like hours. He wasn't feeling well. They only spend 2 minutes. Oh my gosh, I still have lots of time. What should we do? So the three of them had this idea. Why don't we go to the base of Kvaros? Where you could go, I believe, in the neighborhood right there is a little base of Kvaros for the Ger Rebbes. I want to go down by the Ger Rebbes. Okay? No, in Yerushalayim itself. So they're in a car. This is my Sashalia. They're in a car on a ramp getting onto the highway when all of a sudden they hear a thump. Look back. Well, it's fun. A Israeli motorcycle clipped a van. The rider of the motorcycle flipped in the air, fell onto the ground. I'll say it be'ivret l'kavod aktanim. The shever legamri haregel shel echameh shel hanahag. The person's lying there. The Hatzalah guy, stop the car. Told his friend, stop the car. They're in Israel. His friend had a tie. Grabbed the tie. Was actually branded. Grabbed the tie. Jumped out the car. Made a tourniquet. Saved the guy's life. And whatever. 2 minutes later, Magen Dov came. But 2 minutes made all the difference in that case. The Magen Dov guy's like, you saved the guy's life. And they keep on driving. Nice to save the guy's life. The whole story. Huh? No. That was a brand new expensive tie, but it served a good purpose. But here's the thing. Right? I told the guy who it happened to. I told him, he told me the story Friday night. I saw him Shabbos morning. I said, I'll tell you why you were zocha to this story. He says, well, I was zocha to the story? What about the guy who saved his life? Why is he zocha? I said, I don't know him. I tell you why you were zocha to the story. Because you were on the way to daven by Kivrei Tzadikim. You're looking for Yeshua. Well, before you had a chance to ask, you got it. Pretty good, big schus to save a guy's life. He says, you're right. You're right. I can tell you another part of the story. He says, after this whole thing, my friends in the car are going crazy. We just saved the guy's life. And I was trying to say, chilled, okay. It's all a guy. It happens all the time. I mean, not this exciting. Anyway, he says, we decide to go back, go to that basic forest. We go to the Gera basic forest. Walk in, come there. The gate's locked. You can't get into the cover. After all this. Okay, it's my shirt. Right? They're about to leave. This is 12 o'clock at night. In Yerushalayim. All of a sudden, let's make believe the guy's name was Avi. So, a Hasidic guy comes walking, it's like, Avi? The guy looks, the guy's name. What? That's all the guy's name is Avi. 5th grade, Garen Borough Park, remember? It's a classmate of his. So Shmuzing, he says, oh, by the way, do you know the code to the kever? Of course! Seush Armor Shechem. So you never know all the adventures you could have on the way to daven by Kivrei Tzadikim, the schusim you gain just by wanting to go to their kvarim. And Be'ezus Hashem, we should all be zocheh to have all of our tefillos answered in the best places possible and only good things. Thank you very much for listening.
So if you didn't have that
Continue
teacher,
next week.
If you didn't have that teacher, you wouldn't have made it in. Because if you